If you're not chatting, go on mute because it'll bring you up on speaker view. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the fifth of our Movement and Skill Acquisition webinar series of Women Who Change the Discussion. Movement and Skill Acquisition Ireland is comprised of Ed Collin, Phil Carney, Alan Dunn, and myself, Ollie Logan, and we're passionate about all things skill act, coaching science, and youth development. And I hope by hosting these webinars, we're able to connect you with some of the leading figures in these respective areas. So again, a quick summary, we ran a webinar series in April to June of this year. And if you haven't seen any of those, you can check those out on our YouTube channel, which is MSA Ireland, which is down in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. And our first speaker on that webinar series was Sarah Kelleher, who's the current England under-18s hockey coach and was a former Ireland hockey captain. And in the lead up to the conference, Sarah did an interview for the Irish Examiner, and she raised a point about raising the profile of female coaches, and she asked for more stories, more voices. And in response to Sarah's call, we've decided to go with that theme of Women Who Change the Discussion for our second series. The second series, we're really fortunate to be supported by 2020, which is a campaign here in Ireland to promote women in sport. So 20% more media coverage of women in sport, 20% more female participation at a player, coach, referee and administrative level, and 20% more attendance at women's games and events. So we're really thankful for the support of 20 by 20 at this, and you can check out the website 20by20.ie for more information. So for those of you joining us on Zoom today, if you have any questions or queries during the presentation, then please put those on the chat box, keep yourselves on mute, and then we'll come to our guest today with those questions after the presentation. We're also going out on YouTube Live, so if you're watching on YouTube today and watching it live, then please put any questions in the comments box and we can place those to our guest today as well. So that's everything from me, and over to Phil to introduce today's guest.
Ollie. It's a real pleasure to introduce Niamh Buffini. So Niamh has had a long and varied involvement in sport. As an athlete in Taekwondo, Niamh competed at European Championships, World University Games and World Championships, winning a gold medal in the 2010 World Championships. Niamh has also been extensively involved in various coaching and performance roles. Some current and previous roles include performance coordinator for Taekwondo Ireland, together with Robert Taff, part of the coaching team behind the first ever Irish athlete to qualify for the Olympics in Taekwondo. Co-founder and director of South Dublin Taekwondo Club, founder and CEO of Buff Performance, National Aquatic Centre Swim Club, head of physical performance, and previously performance manager for Paralympics Ireland. So we're delighted to have Niamh with us today to talk about the lessons that she's learned across all those diverse roles. And I will pass you over to Niamh. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Phil. And guys, thanks again for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to lots of discussion. Along with the sharing my experiences, I suppose, over the changing Tokyo Olympics scene. And I always feel like you're talking about somebody else when you introduce me, Phil. So thank you for the nice introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, guys. Okay. So what I'm going to do, guys, is give you an insight into give you a little bit of context into where we've come from as a team with South Dublin Taekwondo and where we are now, but also, I suppose, what it is we're trying to achieve and the outlook for the future. So there will be there is one video, hopefully, that will work, and it'll give you a little bit of context of how the sport operates on a competitive high performance level. But also give you context into our club and adaptations that we've made over the 6 to 7 months. So my name is Niamh. Obviously, as you know, I'm going to chat about the changing Tokyo Olympics journey, but without going too much into club context. That is what has formed part of our journey up to now. So it's important to talk about it. I am CEO of Buff Performance, which I set up 2 years ago, my own athletic performance company, and I'm head coach of South Dublin Taekwondo. So I recently set up my business. I suppose I've always been involved in high performance sport, and I wanted to get involved at all levels of helping people through their fitness and athletic journeys. So that's part of the reason why I went out and set up my own business. You can see in the photograph here, guys, if everybody can give me a thumbs up to make sure you can see the presentation properly. Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah. So this is kind of our anchor HQ team, if you like, from the club. Centre is obviously myself. To my right there is Jack Woolley, first ever qualified for Taekwondo for the Olympic Games for Ireland. Second from the left is Robert Taff, the other high performance coach, and he's also high performance director for Taekwondo Ireland. And then these guys, younger guys here, either side of us, are athletes, high performance athletes. And then the older guys, either end, are either parents or their support from our club. So some examples for you as to exposure, I suppose, that I've had in different sports, athletes that I've worked with in a physical capacity. And if I've not coached them or been involved in their athletic career physically, I've worked with them from a managerial perspective towards the Paralympic Games and still working with them towards the next Olympics, Paralympic Games and the Winter Olympics in 2022. So Taekwondo, plenty of para swimming behind me. We have paracycling, GAA, para-athletics, paracycling again. Great experiences that came from the Paralympics. Part of the HQ, as well as being operations and high performance manager in Rio as well. This was the Para Swimming World Championships that came to Dublin in 2018, which was a wonderful and fruitful experience, and Winter Olympic sports professional athletes that I work with as well. So many different sports, many backgrounds. I've come from a multi-sport kind of background myself, having participated in, you know, team sports, individual sports, and then ending up specializing in Taekwondo from the age of 13, coaching from the age of 15. So many years coaching. Part of the culture of the club that I would have come from myself would have very much, I suppose, not forced upon you, but it was kind of a non-option, a non-negotiable, if you like, to have to get involved in helping everybody in the club. So it was all hands on deck, but it very much was a culture of winning. And it's been embedded in us since, you know, day one, since I started in that particular club. And myself and Robert both came from that club as well. So just to give you a bit of structure to the presentation, I will go into a bit of how we've built our structure over the last 10 to 11 years with the club. Our response to the last 6 to 7 months over COVID for about 20 minutes, and then the focus for the future. So if you take these two photographs, just to contextualize it for you, you can see the vastness. This is a kind of an AI shot. It's not a real shot, but this is the World Championships 2 years ago in Manchester. Pretty cool setup. It's very ordered type. It's a martial art first and foremost, but if you're not familiar with the sport, I am going to play a little video for you so you can see kind of how far the sport has come when it started back in the 90s, how sparring was on the mat and how it is now, I suppose, pre-Olympics and during Olympics. So the volume may be a little bit low, but the volume doesn't really matter once you get a good kind of visual of how the sport has evolved over a short period of time. Okay, takes me back to my competitive years. Right, we'll move along. So you can see the transformation between, you know, in the 1990s when the sport pre-Olympics, it's only been in the Olympic Games since 2000, Sydney 2000. It has had, it showcased the sport in Seoul Olympic Games, and then it was competitive within Sydney onwards. So it's pretty young Olympic sport, if you like. The rules, I was chatting to the guys beforehand, the rules are just ever changing, and it's created this kind of necessity for adaptability within the sport as coaches, as athletes. When we look at technology, when we look at tactics, when we look at you know, other teams across the world, cultures, we've really been forced over a long period of time to try and adapt our way of coaching. And if you have a look at this slide here, our philosophy, I was chatting to Robert the other day, and I suppose he kind of said this to me the other day, and I really took it on board. And it's true, because we live by this philosophy: is what works for today will not work for tomorrow in our sport. Okay, maybe in your sport, it might be around for a very long time. It might have a lot more experience or already be very competitive within the Olympic Games cycle. But definitely in our own context, what works in a high performance focus today won't work for tomorrow. So we're constantly having to evolve and adapt to change. So I suppose we've kind of, through our response to change, we've adapted with probably contextualizing this across 4 main pillars. Our ability to adapt to change, our physical variables, so what is surrounding us and what do we need to change, what do we need to keep the same. Our daily club context, keeping the club operating at the same level as we always have, and trying to make improvements and adaptations for everybody, because without that, the high performance focus doesn't really exist. So then our high performance focus. So when initially when lockdown happened with COVID, I think it was a Thursday, we were traveling back from Serbia, actually, and we were coaching at an event in Serbia. And it was the day that the Taoiseach was due to announce the schools closures. Okay, now I have a 7-year-old, so it doesn't impact on me as well. Of course, it impacts on everybody. And we had to be very quick thinking. So what we did was, in the airport on the way home, myself and Robert sat down, we separated ourselves from the rest of the athletes. I suppose we were with the younger athletes, and they hadn't got a care in the world. They didn't really know the severity of what was coming down the line. None of us really did know. But I suppose we were kind of forced into this space where we had to keep the club operating, number one, but we also had to stay game ready. We had the Olympic Games coming up. What were we going to do? So we created this kind of SWOT analysis, if you like, a very simple SWOT analysis, and a very simple plan was created out of that. And we went through it again on the flight home. And then by the time we landed in Dublin Airport, we had a fully fledged plan in place to try and tackle club closure, school closure, not being able to travel to training from home, all of the other aspects that come into play. What could we do remotely? What were our threats? We couldn't travel all of a sudden. So all of these questions were kind of swirling around. So that was the first kind of, I suppose, attack that we had to our game plan, to our Olympics game plan, because we didn't know the Olympics at that stage was going to be delayed. It was going to be changed. So I suppose we were trying to think of every eventuality at the time. So first and foremost, as I was saying to the guys earlier on, we rely a lot on technology for our sport. So if you see here, this is the equipment that would have been used in London. That equipment has since changed in Rio, and it's going to change for Tokyo again. Also alongside that, because our sport is quite new, we've endured rule changes to the rule book over a period of time with major events, Worlds, Europeans and Olympic Games. And the rule book is constantly changing, but so is the equipment. And so you can only imagine how that has to have impacted on our coaching, our tactics, our modality of training, athletes' mindset, everything from physical to mental adaptations. So when it actually came to adapting to COVID and the changes, it really didn't impact us that much in terms of our planning. But I suppose physically it did impact everybody in a big way. It was just our approach to that planning was quick fire, it was like lightning, because we had been doing it and had to do it over a long period of time with our sport. We were forced to do it again. So our physical variables, first things first, how do we keep the club running? And our high performance unit, if they're on lockdown, what do we do? So we made sure that our physical variables were all catered for. If we were on full lockdown, we had full online training in place. We created online booking systems. We separated our groups out a little bit better. Everybody had much more of a purpose when they arrived to training. People weren't just rocking up at the front door ready to go for their intermediate or their senior group. They were online with a purpose. And I found that goal setting and accountability really came to the forefront with particularly the younger guys. It was already in place with the seniors. But with the younger guys, I think they realized they had to start taking a bit more responsibility on for themselves. So it was great to see. partial lockdown then, when things opened up a little bit more, we were able to go outdoors. Now, bearing in mind, we're in a snug environment where we train indoors all of the time, not like Phil there, where he's doing his training session outdoors at the moment. We're not used to being outdoors with our sport at all. It's an indoor sport. We're used to our heat. So going outdoors. And the second thing is training with shoes on. It's something we're not used to either. So training with shoes on outdoors in a cold environment, wrapping up, very, very much a new thing for us. So then obviously we had to keep the high performance element going. Jack did a lot of his own training indoors. He was able to, we got special dispensation then for high performance athletes to train in our unit, which we were able to open back up for them. We were very grateful to be able to do that. And I suppose in a privileged position that we were able to do that. But all the while we're trying to cater for seniors, intermediates and juniors, we were constantly trying to keep training space safe, but also trying to keep it as a learning environment. And how could we create a learning environment in this new environment at the same time while people are still trying to adapt? So one thing we did for the high performance athletes was we made sure that we were able to try and get them abroad to a couple of camps. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but the camps were fantastic, but it also allowed us to gauge where we were at in comparison to the rest of the world in a high performance context. So club adaptation, these are just a few facts and figures, what we did over, I think this was more over 5 to 6 months, and up to now, this is what we've done. A lot of clubs around the country have probably done something similar. So hopefully you can relate to this. Just constant communication, guys. 12 COVID updates via email too. That's aside from the likes of, constantly updating on, training time, Zoom links, all that kind of thing. But 12 major changes with COVID updates, training modality according to the rules, staying safe. We also created online events for our guys, worldwide events as well as home events. I suppose we were definitely the first people in our sport to create this online event with some of the new technology that's about for our sport. And we had 3 continents involved, 10 countries, hundreds of athletes. I don't know why I have a comment in there, but there was hundreds of athletes that came online from South America to Australia to Europe. And it was phenomenal. We were the first people to ever do it within the sport. And I suppose that's why I have that word crusaders in there. Is I know that there are some ideas that we will come up with, and people come up with them every day, but do they act upon them? I don't know. And that could be part of why, we've had a lot of success over the last while. Smaller things like investing in equipment. We've secured grants of up to 40,000 for CPD, for equipment, sports gear, technology, and this, I suppose, taking on the attitude that whatever it takes to keep high performance, and Jack specifically, because the Olympic Games were moved for him, whatever it took for him to get the best out of his training in whatever scenario, we were willing to do that and sniff out the funding to be able to secure whatever it is that he needed. And of course, that has a trickle effect down the line to all the other athletes in the club as well. So we stayed extremely focused. Our kind of snapshot or our tagline for our club is creating champions. And that doesn't go as an empty statement. When we started our club 11 years ago, we wanted to create consistent, repeated success for athletes to be able to compete at Olympic Games, qualify for the Olympic Games, and continue to do that over multiple games, and not just it be a one-hit wonder. So Jack is the start of our story, and we hope to repeat that over a long period of time. And I suppose with myself and Robert having been athletes before and performance coaches, and our backgrounds and experience, we've been able to stay true to that mission through to now, and we haven't let the ball drop at that. As I said previously, whatever it takes to still realize this dream, we will do. I haven't mentioned that myself and Robert also work full time. So this is voluntary. So the work that we do here is all part-time. It's voluntary. We're not paid as coaches. I think we're probably one of the only NGBs in Ireland that has voluntary coaches at this level. We're not paid. Okay. So any money that we make from the club is put back into the club. All right, so our focus, we've 100% stayed true to our mission. Yes, it's been tough at times, it really has. And I fully appreciate not everybody has the ability to do what we've been able to do. We have been very much in a place of, luck partly, but also, like I suppose in terms of having the space to provide for high performance athletes, as well as being able to secure funding for certain things. We've really been privileged. Philip, are you taking off the space there? You're going black and white. We're not losing you. I don't think we are. So I suppose with our focus, we've really stayed true to our mission. Creating champions is our mantra, and we continue to live by that every single day. And it's been constant. It's been every single day tapping into that mantra, constantly asking ourselves, well, are we still on the road, on track? Are we still on track to be able to achieve this? Yes. Why? Because we did this yesterday. That will create our picture for tomorrow. Or does this work for today? Is this plan still going to work for tomorrow? No. Okay, we need to adapt and change. And that's done after work time. It's done with a lot of phone calls, a lot of texts with ourselves as coaches. Also with a lot of communication abroad with other coaches as well, seeing what they're doing, and not necessarily copying or listening too much. I suppose we do listen, we take things on board. Does it apply to us? Not all the time. So we don't always go with it, but sometimes we do. If it applies to our context, yes, we'll apply some things that we've learned over time or learning from other coaches. And then again, doing whatever it takes. If a high performance athlete needs a week out from competing, from camp, from training, whatever it might be, then they get that time. And we're always in communication with the likes of Jack and David. Also, I suppose in terms of doing whatever it takes, we podded. So a part of our plan when we realized that lockdown was going to happen, and we were in a privileged position again, I suppose, to be able to pod Jack with one of our other high performance athletes. So he went and moved in with Jack in his home. One thing we realized as a threat was that we're in a combat sport. If an athlete didn't have somebody else to spar and the Olympic Games are coming up, that is a serious threat. So we were pretty quick thinking with this. We had David move in with Jack for 12 weeks. And not only did that give Jack the opportunity to spar somebody, to train with somebody, but it gave him social interaction with somebody his own age. They had a bit of crack at the same time. They learned a lot about each other. And they had, I think they enjoyed life a little bit too much, but they still trained quite hard. We were in constant communication with them, ensuring that, things weren't getting out of hand. They weren't staying up late. They were constantly updating their daily monitoring as well. So we use a lot of support from the Institute of Sport for high performance athletes and carded athletes as well. They offer good support for coaches in a high performance context as well. So with our daily monitoring, we use Kitman Labs, and Kitman Labs allows you to go in and kind of input your sleep, your wellness, your physical load for training. And we get those reports on a weekly basis. So we can see exactly where Jack has overdone it, underdone it, where we need to tweak training for him, but also with regards to his psychology support, with his nutrition support, S&C, all of the above. So we've really gotten a good snapshot of how things have gone over the last 7-8 months, and luckily it's been consistent. But I suppose we won't really know the value, or I suppose the what we've put in place. Has it worked? We won't know until this time next year. So far we think it's been pretty good. But hopefully, if we're having this chat this time next year, post-Olympic Games, we'll have a success story behind us. So I suppose whatever it takes, again, into the future, will the Games look different after this pandemic? Is it going to move again? It could possibly move time-wise to later on in the year. International travel, will it ever be the same? I don't know. We rely heavily on our performance athletes to be able to travel abroad. As coaches, we spend up to 150 days abroad with the athletes as well, but they spent over 200 days abroad at camp. So can that happen? I don't know. Will we go into a bit more of a robotic type of a nature sport, relying more on technology? Is that going to change our coaching ability? Or will we just have to keep adapting as we go? And the Olympic Games, will they create smaller, more intimate events like, per continent, instead of having it as a worldwide event? The question is out there. But in terms of adapting, we've constantly adapt over the last 7 months. We've done our online training. We've done, pre-recorded live sessions. We've purchased this kind of robotic type gear and kicking pods or dummies, if you like, for the kids and the seniors. So we've allowed some of the club members, and the parents have been great in getting involved with helping us out as well. So when kind of the initial lockdown lifted, we were able to dish out and have a booking system where people could book in to take the equipment. with them, and the kids have been able to train and interact not only with interaction with the technology, but also with their families, which has been wonderful to see. And we've had great interaction between the seniors and juniors as well, in terms of competitiveness. And we've created online events, as I said earlier on. We did a little, award ceremony. We've done gradings online, as you can see here. And I will myself be doing my own online grading for the first time ever. So I'm going for my 6th Dan next month, and I'll be doing that online. So that will be completely new for me. But I think it's very important for, if we're going to adapt very quickly as coaches, we have to set ourselves challenges and reflect on those challenges. And are we constantly moving with the times, as well as expecting the athletes to move with the times? So a couple of little drawbacks, obviously. Some obvious ones here. The travel was a massive drawback for us, but we managed to get our high performance athletes abroad to 2 camps, and will continue to do so. We were due to go ahead to France, actually to a camp this week, but France was on lockdown since Monday, so we couldn't do that. So to tackle that, and that was probably one of the major camps for Jack to go to be able to spar against other Olympians. Now he was able to do that in Belgrade, but this one has just got a lot more intensity to it. A lot more competitive nature to the camp, if you like, high intensity competitive nature. So that was a really good one for him to be able to go to. So that was just a little bit of a disappointment for Jack. But what we did was to try and tackle that and get him into a better frame of mind, still get him into the competitive frame of mind. We went online with a day seminar where we had some of the guys training together online from France, some of the guys that would have been at the camp. And we created just a little bit of a competition with this I'll go back to this body armor here that you can see the lights shining up. You can create competitions with the body armor and put it across the screen so people can see what your speed and what your power and that is at. So we did that. We also presented him with a new his Olympic suit that we had planned to present him with before he went to the Olympic Games. So we gave that to him, creating the atmosphere, making him feel special, and holding the fire, the flame, the Olympic flame alive, I suppose, inside. One thing that we did struggle with was intensity of training. So some of our sessions obviously were online with Jack during the full lockdown, so we couldn't get him to the club initially, and it was very hard for us to gauge intensity of training for him and for us as coaches. So we used a lot of back and forward communication with RPE scales, and because he does use the online monitoring system, we were able to gauge over a quick period of time, a period of 4 weeks, the intensity that he perceived training to be versus the intensity that we intended to have for him. And a few surprises came in, but ultimately, I suppose it was a drawback initially, but now we've kind of rectified that problem by ensuring that he inputs his intensity for a session straight after his session rather than doing it the next morning. So small little adaptations like that, but we can go back and see now exactly where we can tweak things or need to tweak things for the future. So the good news is that there are highlights to come up. The Games is still alive very much, and we have that to look forward to. And I think we've all fully adapted to the virtual world. So it's safe to say that we're all very used to it, even though we might put ourselves on mute still every now and again. We've embraced it and very much embraced that in the culture now of our club. All of the kids, right down to the little tots up to the parents, are all training online, used to, video replay, used to live recordings, and relying on technology basically to get done what needs to be done. So I suppose another one of our mantras is, and Robert said this to me the other day, is we want to make sure the HP guys stay competitively ready. So if called upon tomorrow, they're ready. Physically, mentally, everything. It's really strengthened our relationships together, I think. And one thing, that's why I put a picture of young Nicole Turner here, who I coach in the gym, S&C. She's a silver medalist in the European and Worlds. I asked her a few weeks back, I said, how has our relationship changed, or how do you feel we've gotten on through all of this online training? And she says, I think we've come together a lot closer. We've gotten to know each other a little bit better because we've been spending more time chatting off the cuff in a non-formal setting. And it's been really nice to get to know and understand her. She's just a wonderful athlete to work with in general anyway, so it makes my job very easy. But yeah, I think it has created a bit more resilience as well in our athletes, being able to adapt so quickly to change, being able to adapt to technology, which has been a massive converter of change for us. And our interaction is just quicker. regardless of having to set up Zoom links and presentations and training sessions online. We're reverting to the phones and technology a lot more to communicate, because we can't physically be together. So we just have to do it, get over it, and do it. So we're interacting a lot more often, I suppose, in smaller snippets, if you like. And the story continues. Our Olympic Games journey is still alive. It's just been put on hold for the moment, but we're still working towards the Olympic Games 2021 and Paralympic Games for myself, and I suppose for the Winter Olympics in 2022. And then subsequently further on that, we hope to come across some of you guys on our path and on our journey, and hopefully you guys have a few questions that you'd like to ask me. So I'd welcome any questions. I don't know if you guys want to, might pass you over to Ollie there.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Niamh. Thank you. That was really, really interesting, and certainly mirrors some of the experiences that I've had with British swimming in terms of the the movement of the games and the adaptability that we've had to all face. I'll just pass you over to Ed, and Ed will open up the floor for questions. We've had a few come through there already.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Phil, and thanks, Niamh. That was an incredible insight into, number one, the adaptability required of the athletes in the sport that has so many changes in over recent years, but also how that adaptability has proved to be such a benefit and a powerful source for you guys to be able to adapt so well in the current climate. There's a question that's come through from Anne-Marie Williams, and so if I can just ask Anne-Marie to unmute, and she'd like to ask you her question directly. There you go, Anne-Marie, you should be able to unmute now, I think.
Hello, Niamh. Thanks for your presentation. I don't have much experience in Taekwondo, but I was wondering, at what age are competitions introduced? And as coaches, is your focus for children on winning or on, like, say, participation, enjoyment and experience? And am I right to assume that winning competitions becomes more important as athletes get older, which aligns with your mantra of creating champions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that question. Really, really good. So to tackle the initial part of your question, competition is actually introduced from a very young age in Taekwondo. So we have a Pee Wee section, which is under sixes, where contact is kind of kept to a minimum and headshots are not allowed. And that's all the way up to under sixes, up to green belts. So there is a very good, well-structured approach to competition for younger guys. It also, it varies between weight categories as well. So competition, I suppose, it starts off with two athletes in a ring with a referee in the center. It's very safe. It's a very safe environment. There's a lot of rules to the game. So it's nowhere near like MMA where there's only two rules and it's, a free for all. Absolutely not. It's very controlled. So for the younger guys, it's a very safe environment, and there's actually very few injuries that happen during a match. There are more injuries in soccer than there are in Taekwondo, believe it or not, it being a contact sport. So in our club environment, yes, our mantra is creating champions, but we cater for all spectrums of abilities and goals, if you like. So if somebody steps into the club at a young age, 7, 8, 9, 10, they arrive in with the expectation that they want to learn a new skill, learn a new sport, and they're coming into the environment of a winning environment. However, we cater for every single level, every single expectation, every single goal that an individual might have, because we fully understand that not everybody wants to go to the Olympic Games, and we're flexible to that as well. But I suppose at the high performance level, we do have that mantra of creating champions. And having said that, our high performance athletes don't all and won't all qualify for the Olympic Games either. And that's fine. But everything does feed into that. Everything else is like almost a converter into that cog. And the high performance wouldn't exist without the lower level competitive side of things, if you like, as well, or participatory side of things. So we acknowledge that participation is one aspect. High performance is one aspect as well. They're not separated from each other. And international travel is a big component of our high performance, but also participation is a big component of the younger guys coming in wanting to learn a new skill as well. So yeah, was there a third part to your question there?
That kind of answered it. So it's kind of interesting to see that international travel plays a bigger part as the athletes kind of get older.
Exactly.
So that overall, the creating champions leads to a high standard of coaching, which trickles down to each age category.
100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for your question, Anne-Marie.
Thanks very much.
And Niamh, I have a question before, and there's a couple of questions coming in. Just before we go to Conor Fagin, I have a question just about the changes in the rules that you guys have had to endure, and I suppose it's incredible because again, I wouldn't have the insights that others might have about your sport, but it seems almost like it's part and parcel of your sport because it's so changeable. Is that a positive or a negative? And I suppose the words that I wrote down here is, does it encourage or stifle growth in the sport because it's moving so much that there is so many rule changes?
So I think in our environment, we've allowed it because we take a growth mindset to change. And we adapt very, very quickly. And because of the two personalities that we have, myself and Robert, now we're by no means geniuses, but I think because of the approach that we've taken to coaching and embracing everything and knowing what to leave behind and what is beneficial for us to move forward, we've absolutely 100%, it's not stifled us in any shape or form. The only thing that might, interfere is that if there's something we can't access in order to be able to change or adapt to what is coming down the tracks. Now, we haven't really had a problem with that. I suppose it's a personal thing. If an athlete is resistant to the change, that's when we might have to come and, realign and reassess and reflect then, okay, well, is this for us? Is this relationship working? What do we need to change in order to help this person along? I did another talk there on Monday with Phil, and constant communication all the time. So these big changes where, one sport might have the same rule book for over 20 years across multiple Olympic Games. We have multiple rule changes, but they're actually happening in small snippets over a period of time. And so to us, they're actually only very small changes, but to some other sports, they're huge. And I get that, but it's just the environment that we're in. One stone turns, another one flips over. It's just the cards that we've been dealt with. And
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because you just see from other sports when there are small rule changes and some larger rule changes that there's such massive pushback from people within the sport when there is a rule change. We see it in Gaelic games, we've seen it in rugby, we see it even in football at the moment, soccer. For you guys, it's just part and parcel of being the sport that it is. So maybe it's for people when they come into your sport, but almost as the longer they stay in the sport, the more used to it they are and the more adaptable they'll be, because it's incredible to hear of that many changes in
and there is every now and again resistance to it, but every culture, it doesn't matter what creed, sex, religion, culture that you have, everybody is in the same position. But it's whether you decide to embrace that change or, and in a high performance culture, guys, you're left behind if you don't. So
yeah, no, very good. Okay, I'll go over to Conor Fagin. I'll just ask you to unmute there, Conor. You should be able to do that now to ask your question directly to.
Hi, Niamh. How are you?
Good,
thanks very much. The presentation was excellent. I work with Badminton Ireland, and I suppose as a governing body, we've identified within our foundation coaching awards that we would have a 50-50 split really between male and female participants, but when it gets to level 1, then it leans more towards a 75-25 in favor of the males. So I suppose based on your own practical experience and the journey that you've been on as a coach, how do you think we can get more Niamh Buffinis to coach at higher levels, and what's the practical steps that we could take as governing bodies to get more females coaching at those higher levels?
Great question, and I appreciate your question. Look, I don't have all of the answers because in your context, it's going to be very, very different. However, I do think this initiative that 2020 have created is going to be a massive converter for change in this area. It has definitely given me a lot more opportunity to be able to present things like this. In order to keep participation with females in sport, I really, it's such a tough one. It really is such a tough one. I think if you're in a position, okay, and in my club, we were in a position that we had a 50-50 split with coach. We had one male, one female at a very similar level, very similar mindset towards the sport, towards coaching, towards high performance. If you can find a way of retaining females in some sort of capacity where they can see progress for themselves personally, but also for the benefit of the club. So if you're able to get female coaches involved from an earlier age and have the little bit of responsibility, women love a bit of responsibility. And I think if you're able to give them a little bit more, maybe in terms of being responsible for pods of, kids coaching or skills-based learning or whatever it might be. And now is a really good time to embrace that actually online, because I know sometimes females may not be as vocal physically, presence-wise as male coaches might be. So I think maybe giving them some sort of project to work on, let them go off as a female group, pick out the leader of that group and have them be the crusader of the development of whatever type of project that you're working on is. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be the fix for you guys in your own sport, but I think giving a little bit more responsibility and showing them like the hashtag, if they can't see it, they can't be it, is totally true. Show them that they can do it and they will go and do it. Like it's, and that's not plain and simple. It can be, it's a long road to recovery, if you like, to getting that balance. Hopefully that might help. I think definitely a little bit more accountability and responsibility and showing them, giving them the floor, give them the platform to be able to voice their opinion, voice their coaching skills, show off a little bit more. It's just not in our nature as much as it would be with men to show off, and not in a cocky way, just to show what we have, show our skills, show our mentoring skills. We are nurturers by nature, so why not allow that into a coaching context as well? Does that help in any way? I don't know. Your environment is going to be a lot different, I suppose, than ours. And I suppose in a male-dominated sport such as combat sports, there's probably even less of an influence of women in the sport as well. But the other side of it is as well, I suppose, in the high performance context, that everything has been equal. So all of the rewards, the medal ceremonies, there's equal amounts of medals for male and female in the Olympic Games. That was a big aspect of the previous games. Rewards such as prizes, money funds in Grand Prix, they've all been equaled across the board, male to female. So if a gold medalist male wins €100,000 in an event, female wins exactly the same. And that's at a higher level. That's dealing with the bigger, I suppose, the bigger platforms. But in your own personal context, maybe, give the women a little bit more responsibility or equal responsibility. If they don't put up their hand and volunteer for something, pull them out of their shell and almost, push them, give them the little bit of a nudge.
I really like that, Niamh, especially your phrase, and I will be using this one. We are nurturers by nature. I know a lot of women in my life, between my sisters, my mother, and my wife, who absolutely subscribe to that quote. I also like the idea, because what you're saying there resonates with our guest last week, Louise Galvin, but also the 20 for 20 conference that was on recently, where Tina Foley had some interviews with some people. She met with Graham Shaw and with Mick Bowen, who were obviously coaches of high performing female environments, and both of them speak about that same thing, about that accountability, responsibility, and just, don't be surprised for what you're going to get, because of course, why should we be surprised? Because it's just about championing more people and having that trust that they're going to catch the ball, and actually, stand back and let, as you said, let them show you what they're capable of. So it's the great message that we need to continue to push. I'm going to go to Ollie, then Phil, and Al. Alan. So Ollie, if I can go to you first.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I suppose, Niamh, just a question for you around what your experience has been with the athletes you've been working with around this kind of lockdown and kind of future lockdowns and future scenarios. So one of the big things we've noticed is there's certainly been a change in the perspective of athletes and being more grateful for the scenarios and the opportunities that they have. But then also an increasing uncertainty as more lockdowns happen, and the uncertainty over maybe future competitions, or whether they're Olympics or whether they go ahead. But just wondering what are the lessons that you have, and maybe the athletes you have worked with. What are the lessons that you can maybe give to maybe even some of the general public who are feeling some uncertainty over when this whole thing will die down?
Yeah, it's a really good, it's really interesting, because you really kind of see who has that positivity, motivation and drive in them in comparison. It kind of separates, the gold medalists from the bronze medalists almost at that level, 100%. Yeah, like I suppose, and I've delved deep within myself around this period of time. I've done a lot more soul searching, if you like, a lot more reading into things, a lot more reading into the nature of humans. I'm no psychologist by any means, but I suppose having been there as an athlete and having been there by an athlete's side as a coach when times are tough, times are uncertain, this is all very new. And I don't know that the impact has really come to the forefront just yet. Yes, the uncertainty is there, but the way that we've managed it is we've kept certainty where we know we can control certainty, and that's within our own bubble. And I said it on Monday on a different talk there with Phil, is that we really, like, I'm so intrigued to get other people's opinions on this, because we've been in our own little hub for the last 6 months, and we've not really lifted our heads up and looked around at all. This is, I haven't really done much talks and much interaction outside of the sport, only in my own professional context with other sports, but control what it is you can control within your own environment and make that real, make that their competitive environment. So like with the example that I gave with Jack the other day, he was due to travel away to France with this camp and it just got kiboshed. And I could see the mood, and, there was just a little bit of a gasp, and he lost a lot of motivation because of that one episode. In the midst of all of this, that was the one thing he was so looking forward to doing. And we didn't see, because he was able to travel to 2 other camps and interact with other guys, he saw this one as his little, mini Olympic Games, his little challenge. So what we did was we presented him with his Olympic competitive suit. We made sure that he was able to interact with these guys online and share his experiences with these guys, because these guys are going through the exact same thing as he is. And why not open up the floor to a couple of personalities that he's, competed against before? Yeah, they're high performance competitive guys that he might come up against on the mat on the Olympic Games next year. But that might be pushed down the line again. So we allowed him to interact with those guys, even though he's probably doing it online as well. But I suppose in a controlled environment where, we might set the topic for them to speak about certain things as coaches, and then the coaches are interacting with each other and across the athletic platform as well. So I suppose we're trying to keep the fire alive in that sense by doing those little small snippets of things, being creative all of the time. But the big thing is keeping his head in the game by keeping him coming training every single day, keeping the intensity up, keeping match ready, and keeping that fire burning, and also having David move back in with him again, the other high performance athlete. Even though he didn't necessarily have to this time round, we had him go back in and live with him full time again, just to, again, create that if this lockdown happens again, this is going to happen. And we're even looking at trying to rent a house somewhere so that a few of them can live together. And we're going to try and secure funding for them to, and I know that might happen with other sports already. I know with the GB Taekwondo, a few of the guys live together. So they've had the luxury of, 2 Olympic gold medalists living together. They've had the luxury to train with each other this whole time. Again, we're volunteers. We don't have as much funding as some other bigger NGBs. We're doing this all off our own bat in our own spare time. So if that's as far as it goes, that's as far as it goes. But constant communication with Jack. He hasn't had very many bad days, but I'm sure he's not telling us about it all either, So chats, online chats, face-to-face chats, meeting up for a coffee if we can, going off for a little drive, having those long conversations if needed, and keeping him in touch with his S&C coaches, keeping up to date with his daily monitoring all the time as well. Just not letting the ball drop at all. That's how we've approached it. I'm not saying it's going to work for somebody else in another sport, but because we're dealing with pretty much one Olympic athlete for now, that's what has worked for us up to now. Yeah.
And that's the thing as well, just pick up on the point is a lot of people see the high performance athletes as being fully motivated 24 hours, 7 days a week. Actually, as much as anybody else, they have their bad days and their low points as well. And they need picking up. So, and the same as we do is you know, we have challenging days, and just getting through the day is sometimes, and through the training is a success as well. So yeah. Really
And I found over time as well, you probably find this with the exposure to different personalities that you have, but I found over time some of the best athletes have the biggest demons. And some of these demons are just they're deep, they're dark, they go into dark places. It doesn't matter what environment you come from. Sometimes it can be from, you know, not such a good environment to, you know, having millions and being, you know, in a very wealthy environment sometimes. But yeah, the ebbs and flows are more extreme for high performance athletes, I find. And I found that as an athlete myself. And it's only really that I've kind of come out with a bit more experience and seen it from the other side of things that I realized these guys need consistency every single day. You can't leave them on their own, you know. And for Jack, this is his consistency in his life, really. You know, this is his sport, this is his life. He's got a great support unit at home, great support from Sport Ireland, from the NGB, but it's us he comes back to every time. So we're not going to ignore that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you. That's great. Phil?
I think I'm going to jump in just before Phil, if that's all right. And I'm going to take the opportunity to ask 2 questions, if that's okay, Niamh. One, just to come on the back of what Ali had said. You guys have shown a fantastic ability to adapt through COVID. And I think through conversations with our coaches, a lot of people are finding that they're actually having to be more creative in certain situations and do things that they typically haven't done before. So is there anything that you've done that you would keep in a land that's probably post-COVID in terms of adapting your training?
Everything. You know, until the rule book changes, we'll adapt again. We'll keep everything. You know, we're almost going to, you know, we almost prefer the style of training and coaching that we have created now, because the kids are a lot more intuitive. They come with their own. So when partial lockdown happened, when the fully lockdown went into partial lockdown and the kids were able to pod in pods of 6 in the club, they were able to come in and do their training, but we weren't allowed to physically coach. We were only allowed to coach 1-to-1. So we couldn't coach and dictate. We had to step back. But what we did was we had these guys come in with their own session plan. Now, as 8 to 10 and, you know, 9-year-olds, they were like, what? But we gave them examples of session plans. We had Jack, as a high performance Olympic athlete, come in and chat to them about how to create a session plan, creating a little bit more accountability for them. And then they all came in with a purpose. And that has created all sorts of, you know, advancements. It's created all sorts of positive repercussions, if you like. The parents started getting involved. I've never seen parents so involved in the sport ever. And they used to come into the club, sit down, watch training and not talk to each other while they're sitting beside each other. Now, all of a sudden, they all know each other and they're talking to each other a lot more. The communication is just fantastic. Now, it's not all perfect. We have lost some members, you know, it's not for everyone. And granted, you know, the financial situation some people were in, they just couldn't keep up with training, but we've tried to facilitate those guys by allowing them in, come online and do some of the sessions anyway, and they can pick up where they left off when things get better for them. So we accounted for that. But yeah, I really like what we've done. It's not perfect. It still needs to improve, but we have the space, we have that little bit of funding, we have the expertise and the wherewithal to make this a great thing that it already is, and keep it going. So I wouldn't change much, to be honest. Obviously the face-to-face with the sparring, the travel for high performance end of things, that has to stay intact, and we have to get back to that to a certain level. We know and understand and have accepted it's not going to go back to 100%. But in essence, in the real sense of high performance, the Olympic Games is done for 2021. That's out of the way. We're focused on the next games now. So whatever is set in play for high performance athletes now is set in play. You keep going on and keep training, keep doing what you've been doing, improve, you know, tweak things, whatever it is, but we're focused on the next games. So what works for today won't work for tomorrow, you know. But having said that, the things that we have done to cater for the general population in our club environment as a blanket approach has worked really well. So until another curveball is thrown at us tomorrow, you know, we won't change anything today.
And I love that idea of 8 and 9-year-olds coming in their pods and having their session plans and engaging with each other. Oh, what did you make up for your session plan? And I like what you're doing. Let's do a little bit of that, and that peer-to-peer coaching is just fantastic. I just want to kind of bring you back to earlier in your presentation for my second question, if that's okay. You have a massively broad and diverse set of athletes you work with, from high performance to peewees to athletes across different sports and codes. In terms of your approach to coaching, do you approach all of those athletes in a very similar manner, or do you like to approach them in a different manner?
No, I think I do approach them very similarly across the board. I suppose my coaching style would be very relaxed, but intensified when it needs to be intense. I hold a lot of accountability on myself as a coach, so I also put that across to athletes. And no matter what age, they all have to be held accountable for their actions. We as coaches in our club, we don't take any bull, we don't take any messing, but also we're both very laid back people. And I think because we've had to stay on top of the likes of rule changes constantly, like I'll give you an example, right? Now this doesn't really apply to me. It does and it doesn't. So Robert, the other coach of the club, we're married and we have a child together. So that creates all its own kind of wonderful conversations at home. But we were watching soccer there a couple of weeks back, and the video replay that's been introduced in soccer is it's almost humorous to us. I know it's very new in soccer and I appreciate that, but because we've had video replay since day one and the rules are just constantly changing, we are on the ball with, and we're almost ahead of the game, ahead of the referees in some instances. Like I've seen Roberts throw up that video replay card before the referee has even known what's happened in the match, which shouldn't be the case. But I think that's partly why we've educated ourselves and constantly worked around the rule book a little bit, because the sport is so new in the Olympic Games process. Athletes and coaches have actually almost rewritten the rule book themselves. So our approach to knowledge and education and staying ahead of the game is educate, and learn. And I think that's why on the flip side, when it comes to actually delivering coaching, we're very relaxed. Probably more Robert than me. I can get a little bit vocal at times, but that's just my personality as well. Not afraid to shout across the bow and raise the voice. But I suppose, the accountability piece is a massive one for us. And when we're both together as coaches, I have to say we are a great team together. And that's what brings in, I suppose, the good nature of the rest of the community, the rest of the people in the club. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, maybe indirectly. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like that. It's a great response.
Phil, are you ready to come in?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I've got a huge number of questions, not a huge amount of time, but I just want to start actually going back to a comment that you made. So you talked about the importance of stories and seeing examples. And I think there's some really nice examples of that starting to come out. So Jackie Hurley's book about Girls Play 2 was fantastic for players growing up. I think there are examples in the research starting to emerge too. So we've got things like, Anne O'Dwyer and Richard Bowles working together at Mary I have produced some fabulous research that shows about development stories of athletes. And that's a great resource for any coaches who are involved in Gaelic games. So I think we're starting to get these stories, but we need to get more and more of them. The question I have, basically looking at the sheer volume of things that you do, is a really important question, which is about actually self-care. So what are the kind of elements that you do to ensure self-care as a coach to allow you to keep doing all these things?
I think part of balancing that act is being very present and in the moment. And I'm very lucky to have a child and a family. I think they keep us very grounded and realistic in life in general, as some of you probably know as well. The everyday operations of running a household, running a family, keeping yourself active. I do train quite a lot, probably a little bit more than I should. I'm in the gym environment quite a lot as well. So I've just found my way to release any strain or pressure or frustration, if you like. Yes, I'm running my own business. I am a mother of one. It might seem a lot to one person, but I suppose I have my goals in sight and I want to achieve those goals. And in order to keep myself balanced and sane. Interacting with things like this really help, because I love getting and sharing my experiences and knowing whether, you know, I'm going a little bit too far ahead of myself or are we on track with things. And that can go into high performance competitiveness or day-to-day coaching across Zoom. So interacting with other coaches really helps, you know, the conversation. Self-care. Personally, you know, I love to go out into the outdoors. Reading keeps me pretty down to earth and relaxed. Another hobby of mine is following stocks and share trends online, and I do that on a daily basis. A bit of a quirky one, but you know, I do a little bit of investing here and there, but I don't do much. Nothing to shout home about. But I like something that like a daily check-in, a little daily reminder of where the rest of the world is at. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, you know. Don't care too much about Trump, but if it affects my share prices, then I'll read up on it, you know. So yeah, I suppose little daily check-ins, and doing that consistently helps balance my day out, I suppose.
And maybe one more question, Phil, if you've one final question to have maybe to wrap it up, if the noise isn't too bad where you are.
There's a little bit of machinery moving in the background, so apologies about that. I guess the other one that I really liked was a phrase you used about arriving with purpose and the difference between showing up and training. And I thought that was great. And so I guess, could you give us an insight in some practical things that you do to encourage that mindset within athletes so that they are arriving with a purpose?
Yeah, and I suppose that's a really simple one for me. And it's something that I've always done as an athlete. So I've integrated into my coaching, and with the help of technology also, it makes it quite easy to be able to implement from high performance right down to the younger kids in the club. So like most performance coaches, you set your yearly or your 2 yearly or your Olympic cycle timeline and you work back from it. So if it's Jack, you know, we're looking to the next 2 Olympic cycles and we work back from that and we put our little milestones in between. What do we need to achieve to get? So our sport works on a points ranking system for qualification. So we have to build up a certain amount of points to be able to qualify automatically. A lot of sports work like that. Cycling is one. So really, if Jack needs to be in a position where he's, you know, 6th in the world, halfway through the next Olympic cycle, well, what are the major events that we need to hit for him to get those points, and what does he need to achieve within those events? It might seem very simplistic, but what if he didn't achieve it? Well, what's the fallback? The contingency is there as well. So we create the contingency plan, right down to you know, setting personal goals for somebody. Like maybe, let's say if we have a father that comes in and wants to start training in the club, he steps in, he says, right, I want to learn a new sport, I want to join your club. Okay, well, is it for health and fitness? Is it for, you know, you want to get to a black belt? Do you want to help with instructing in the club? There's a purpose for everybody. It's just a matter of that person finding their purpose in the club. And I said before, I suppose it is quite a niche sport. So people will have very particular goals that they want to achieve within the sport. So usually people will come in with a pre-existing type of a goal, and that makes our job a little easier as well. However, new goals do show up. As you asked me on Monday, Phil, you know, what if somebody comes in and they just want to participate and they're not really sure what they want to do? And what do you do with that? Well, eventually we found that these goals have kind of acquired over time, and that kind of inverted type of person that might come to the door and they're shy, all of a sudden they're not so shy anymore. They found, you know, the beast within, if you like, and they've created their goals. They've created what might look like an Olympic future, or an instructing future, or being on a grading panel, or being an international referee, whatever it might be. There's something for everybody, hopefully. And if there's not, they want to stay there for health and fitness reasons, then, you know, by all means, you know, come and train with us 3 times a week. But generally speaking, what I found is they've picked up goals along the way if they hadn't had one pre-existing beforehand. And we look at the bigger picture and work back from that, and finding the little kind of golden nuggets of opportunity. For some of the guys, they might be a little more quiet and introvert. There's one young girl who I alluded to before. She came into the club quite young. Turns out she was extremely athletic. She took up the sport, you know, like it was water off a duck's back. And now all of a sudden she has an Olympic dream created. And, you know, partly that's because she's seeing Jack in the club. He's qualified for the games. And somebody else, you know, another female might come in and say, oh, Niamh's going for a 6 stand this year. I want to do that. you know, so I suppose we're lucky that we have a few personalities and crusaders in the club that people can kind of follow as well, you know, and by and large people will follow rather than lead. So in the club environment, you know, we're always trying to create leaders, but people by and large will kind of follow your lead, if you like. So the leaders are there and it helps.
Brilliant. Well, I pass this back to Ollie now, just to wrap up as he does at the end of each of our webinars. And just, Niamh, thank you so much. It's been great to listen. Great, absolutely great to listen and engage with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we could go on for quite a much longer time, but unfortunately we'll have to wrap up. So yeah, thank you, Niamh, very much for your time, your presentation today. It was an absolute pleasure to hear about all the wonderful things you're doing. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
That's it from our fifth webinar. I'd like to let everybody know that we've got next week, we've got Dr. Anna Stotter on, who's from Anglia Ruskin University. And she's going to talk about her research around how coaches learn. So that should be fascinating. Keep an eye on our Twitter account for details of when that webinar is and registration details. So that's it from everybody at Movement Skill Acquisition Ireland. Thanks for tuning in and have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.